You never say, "Oh, it's finished." No, you keep going. Yeah, but another line, add a tag at the end. Every time you do it, add a tag. If you go on stage and you don't throw at least 15 seconds or a new line or something out there, every time you go on stage, something new or tag something or do something.
Right.
Um, what are you doing?
Greetings, everyone. Come on in and have a seat up front for the Funny Muscle Podcast. If you're here, then you're looking to learn how to create laughs like a pro. So please help me welcome to the stage your co-host to help you do that, economics professor and open micer Chris Stifler and comedian turned author Mike Lucas.
I'm excited to have this guest today. I've known him. I was just telling Chris that I've known this guest since I was doing comedy in Florida, which is the very beginning. And Dan was, I believe, in the Tampa area, and I was in the Orlando area. So we would cross paths because there were certain bookers that would have us do different gigs that we all were doing down there. And Dan eventually, as a comedian, excelled and became a booker of a comedy room called Zanies, and he also became the booker and well, actually the producer and creator and booker of the Chicago Comedy Festival. That was, I think, it was at least 5 seasons long. It was a great, a wonderful, and it was my first comedy festival ever, and we'll talk about that. Please welcome to our show. We're very happy to have him, Dan Carlson.
Bonjour.
So tell me real quickly, did I get your intro right? Tell me exactly which was about what you did with the festival and with the Zanies, and tell me what you're doing now. All of that at once. Go.
The well, we met at Ron Bennington's comedy scene in Clearwater, Florida, and I was house MC there for a short time, and then I started doing the road. I was doing local gigs, and then got in with creative, and did the Southeast, which was a good learning experience. It's like being thrown into a boxing ring right off the bat. It was the first place that I actually had them shut down pool tables and dartboards and just piss people off right at the beginning. So
You
Dothan,
want us to do
Alabama.
what? So we have to what?
Yeah, yeah. They never knew what they were walking into, but that's it. So we had a lot of great comics. Mike being one of those guys that would come through, and I became friends with. And it was a blast. That was really early days. That would have been probably in the early 90s, I would say,
Yeah.
92, 93, 94, something like that.
Yep.
And from there, we like I said, I started doing the road, and then the
Did you
festival was
did
an
you do
idea.
Dan? Did you do a lot of the road? Were you on different tours and all that stuff, or did you mostly stay down in Florida, or did you go up like Midwest and East and West and all that?
Yeah, I did. Well, I never did New York. I did, creative gigs went as far north as Indiana, West Virginia. And then I did, Muller runs, which was,
Yep.
South Dakota and Iowa and the Midwest. And then I got some gigs that were, well, everybody got the Bahamas. So that
Right.
let you put on your resume that you're internationally touring comedian.
We
Uh,
took a boat over there.
yeah, it was that was a great gig though at the Atlantis Resort. That was very
Yeah, that was the gig where I met George Carlin. He was there with
really.
his family, and I happened to be there working as the comedian. And he walked through the. I'd heard that he was going to be there in the you know area, and so I was just walking through, and there he was. So I kind of like ran kind of up behind him. And, excuse me, Mr. Carlin, and he kind of turns, and I was like, hey, I just wanted to say, I grew up listening to your albums. My dad, had all your albums, and I would sneak them and listen to them as a kid. And I became a comic. I said, I'm working right over here now, and I just want to say that I'm just honored to meet you. And he was awesome, and we walked together for like a minute as he went where he had to go, and I went wherever he had to go until he
Of
couldn't go
course,
with
of
me
course.
anymore. I've changed my plans suddenly. And so the funny thing was later I talked to some kids after the show and said I met George Carlin. And one of the girls was like, who's that? And I was like, what? I go, George Carlin? You don't know who George Carlin is? And you're here at a comedy show? And she's like, I don't know who that is. And the other girl who's with her goes, duh, it's the guy from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
That's your audience now.
Exactly.
That is the education of a lot of the audience that you're going to be thrown into. And it's scary. Right?
Okay, so Dan, you for a long time booked comedians. I know you didn't. You booked them at Zanies up there in Chicago, but you also booked them for the Chicago Comedy Festival. So, what do you look for when you're trying to get a new comedian under your wing? Like when you want to bring them in your fold and have them.
Well, that's one of the cool things is finding new people that you haven't seen before that are really there's something special, and there's something special there that it may be kind of not completely honed, of course, if they're first time you're seeing somebody like that, but it's always good when you recognize that there's something there, and there's a lot of elements that somebody needs to succeed, I believe, and how serious you take what you're doing, and let's be honest, some of you people listening will never make it. You're gonna suck. You're gonna never get good. And that's the honest reality, that there's a lot more people. And just like,
why is that though? Why would you say that some people will always hit that wall? What is it in their world?
They don't, their sense of humor is not going to relate to anybody else. And if you're not connecting with an audience, you're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to, I mean, you don't have to have everybody like you, but you have to have a small percentage of people from everywhere. Everywhere is, the world. Let's say if you go to Thailand, there's a comedy room there. Malaysia, are you going to be able to connect with those people with what you've got? And that's reaching another level, I think. But having material that's universal enough to connect, and like I said, you don't have to connect with everybody, but connect with a small portion of people everywhere. Not just where you're from. You can't be too localized unless you don't have ambition to go beyond where you're at. And you figure out where your ambition is, first of all. Where do you want this to go?
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you're
content, of us don't know
content,
what we want.
well, you gotta figure that. And sometimes you don't know that right away. But getting back to what you look for, obviously you want to find somebody that's funny, funny is really the key. It's just not making an audience laugh. How clever, how well written, how edited is the act. Your show is does it represent you? If it doesn't represent you, and this goes right from hitting the stage, what are you wearing on stage? It could be anything really, but it's got to be consistent. Don't do shows dressed in a suit and tie, and the next show you're in cargo shorts and a backwards ball cap. So kind of figure out who you are, and make sure you present that. And think about it. The minute you hit the stage, you're already being judged. When the booker clicks play on the tape, and that's how far back that goes. I remember taking garbage cans of VHS tapes to the curb. But yeah, it's from the moment you are in front of the audience. Are you entertaining? Are you worth listening to? What do you have to say? Do I give a shit? Do I care at all? And you want them to a certain extent, but you want to also convey who you are. So you have to have that individuality to a certain extent, but be funny. Your jokes have to be well written. That's those are the two things that I would say are number one, how serious you're taking things, just as far as your professionalism goes.
And how long does it take you to spot somebody that you like or don't like? Like they say, like within 1 minute I can tell whether or not, or within 5 seconds I can. Like, how long does it take you to spot whether or not you're going to book someone or not? Like at this point, not in the beginning, but like at this point, you've seen so many people. Like, how long does it take?
Well, I mean, a lot of people get anxious and send off looking for work before they're ready, and that's a stupid idea because bookers will remember you. They remember your tape, and they will not even look. Maybe, I mean, they might, but chances are they've already made an opinion about if you're funny or not, or whether they're interested in bringing you to their room or their festival or whatever. So be ready. And what do they say? They say 7 years before you find your voice. I think that might, you can do it. You can do it before that. You just need to really figure out who you are and who you want to represent on stage. Once you do that, and a lot of it's working it out on stage and figuring out what people are responding to and things like that. But again, don't send anything off before you're proud of it.
That's a really good piece of advice, because I think I remember being anxious when I was a MC to be an opener, when I was an opener to be a middle, when I was a middle to be a headliner, when I was a headliner to be a star, and I was always trying to push up to that next step, and I was always trying to, hey, am I ready? Am I ready? Am I ready? And what someone finally told me was, dude, take a breath. They'll tell you when you're ready. They know. They've seen so many people go through this hierarchy. When they can't follow you, they'll know to push you up, whatever that level that is. Now, do you find that's true?
Absolutely. First of all, opener, is opener MC or is opener a bonus act before the feature and headliner? Because
Yes, right. Yes is the answer to that, but both.
well,
sometimes.
An opener, people, if he's introduced as such, are going to be more willing to give the guy a chance, okay, he's starting out. But if you're the MC, you're starting the show. You are, and if you go up there just not giving a shit, or a bad attitude, just not funny, not professional, you set the tone for the show. People aren't going to respect the show as they should, and that anywhere you go, I mean, any room, but it's usually and hopefully people paid money to see the show, because free shows I just do not agree with.
Nightmare.
There has to be a value to the show.
Yeah, they got to have skin in the game.
They don't.
Yeah.
So the MC at Zanies, and this was something that had been done long before I arrived there, they would use headliners as MCs, and they would give them a month, at each club. But they were professional. They knew how to interact with an audience. Yeah. They were going to be successful at talking to people. They've heard it all. They know what everything's going to be, and they've got responses, whether they're canned or whether they've had enough experience to throw out lines on the spot that work.
Yeah.
And
John DaCosta was one of those.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
John DaCosta was one of those house MCs up there.
John DaCosta, Vince Moranto is one of the best that went through there.
Mike Preston.
There's a lot of guys, and it's a good philosophy to take, because the show instantly has credibility. Yeah. And and then you go from there, and knowing how to introduce the next act. First of all, it's not your first comedian. You were the first comedian, so don't say that. Your first comedian. No, our next performer. Oh. It's just the show's already begun. Oh, that's my little part. That's my little skit. Okay, don't milk for applause.
That's all I've got. Thank you. Give it up for me.
Why has that model changed? We talked about this before with Mike about, like, Bernie Mac used to be the MC, the headliner used to MC, and now it feels like it's a model where, like, the freshman has to sweep the floor, and now it's like the younger, pay your dues type model being the MC. I'm curious what your thoughts on why that changed or evolved like that.
Usually, in the smaller clubs around the country, it's usually, from the local pool. And so whatever that is, depending on how small the town is that has a club, and how far away other comedians are willing to drive to do the room, and whether they're paying, MCs, a lot of times it's just, it's a time, or it's a bringer show. What are you talking about? Stop that nonsense. This is ruining comedy.
You remember bringer shows, like you get to the point where you're a comedian where you're like, I got no more friends that want to come and pay to
Nobody
see
wants
the 100th time. And my family is done because all my jokes are about them. I'm mocking them. They don't want to see that anymore. They're hurt.
no, it's like a multi-tier marketing, you sell exactly. It's like you go to all those people once, twice, they buy some products, and
Wait, but this is a pyramid scheme? Comedy is a
yes,
pyramid
it
scheme?
is in a way. Everybody
That's how
gets
to
rich
get
but
you.
you.
No,
No.
but trust me, by the time they get to you, they're going to have a whole full audience. Trust me. They'll bring 5 people, and they'll bring 5 people.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, right. It doesn't work that
No,
way.
it's a lot. Listen, it's a business, and
Yeah.
everybody needs to be paid.
Well, no. So let me ask you this about the MC, because that's something a lot of the people that we talk to, they're looking to get their first paid gig. They're looking for their entryway into this business, and obviously what you said is great. The first thing you got to do, be funny. That's the very first thing. But as an MC, there's things you can do that don't involve being funny that can really put you ahead of the rest of the people vying for that position. So what are some of those things, Dan, that you look for in an MC that are more in line with professionalism as opposed to comedic level?
First of all, do your time precisely as you're instructed to do it. If things are going great and you are killing, don't keep going.
Do your time.
Do your time. End it. It's hot. The show's hot. Don't die, and then you're out of material, and then you got to start the show. No, just do your time. That's important. Be professional. Dress appropriately for the venue and for who you are. That's important. And then respect the staff. Obviously, you have to be funny. You have to know how to interact with the audience, I think, a little bit more than, and if you're good at that, you kind of let the audience know that, hey, it's been fun goofing around with you guys, but the next guys up have a lot to say, so listen to them, whatever that is.
Right.
But yeah, have the ability to talk, be comfortable. Don't show fear. Do not. They will eat you alive the second you don't have a chance. You don't have a chance.
They can smell it, right? The audience can
Honest
smell
to
a
God,
movie.
and I mean, that's go up there with that confidence, start the show off right, do your time, get the show rolling, make sure it runs on time. If you're responsible for giving the light, make sure you give it precisely when you're instructed to give it. Make sure the comic sees it, know how to give the light, know how to acknowledge the light if you're on stage.
And how do you learn all those things? The way I learned it as I showed up and I watched and I just
you watch, and you don't want to. The audience should never see you give the light at all. There's rooms with big red lights in the back, and the whole place glows red when they're getting the light. No, it's just like, no, what's happening here?
Comic leaving, comic leaving, comic leaving.
So they got, that's a 2-minute light. Now you're supposed to pay attention to this closing bit that he'd already done half of the setup for. So no, just it's a quick. It should be a second, but you never even light it until the comic is looking directly at you,
right.
And boom, you hit them with that, and then you look for a nod, or at least if they see it. You learn it very quick.
There's a little blink or a nod or a quick,
or
someone will give you a finger, like they'll.
You got to know where the hot spots in the lighting are, because sometimes you can actually get in a blind spot where they won't see it. Right. So never give them the excuse. I didn't see the light. I didn't see it. No, I gave it to you. I was lighting a cigarette. Don't tell me you didn't see that.
Okay, so you're excellent at that kind of information. How about as a comedian? I want to know your take on. Well, first of all, like as a comic, what's your comedy lens? You talked about having to be sort of your voice when you're talking about your material. We call that the comedy lens. We call that the thing that you sort of. It's like your brand almost, where it's your style of humor and sort of like the personality part of you that applies that to all the premises so that it makes it your take instead of just a generic take. So in your mind, what's your comedy lens? How do you see the world comically?
I'm the guy with those thick Coke bottom glasses and everything's blurred. No, listen.
But when you get on stage, you talk. You're like.
I drool a little, but you got to have the right thing to drink before you.
Gotta be honest, it gets old after about 10 seconds. It really does.
Well,
what's he saying? What's he saying?
Well, Carl LeBove used to go on stage as a mentally incapacitated character, uh, and see how long he could push it.
Oh,
Uh,
it's where everyone's like, really? We have to watch this the whole time? Oh no.
it was
Like his
there's a
poser at
little
all.
sympathy, and then
Yeah.
but he would sell it. I mean, he would just sell it, and people
Oh
didn't.
yeah, he's great. Carl was one of the original Outlaws, wasn't he? Going around with Sam Kinison.
Yeah, he was one of those guys. He was Sam's best friend. He held
Yeah,
Sam's head
yeah.
as he died.
Yeah.
They
Yeah, I
were
worked with
like,
Carl, and he told me that story, and it was like, wow, 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 wow. Yeah. Well, so what is it that
oh, the comedy.
you
Yeah.
like? What? Yeah, yeah. I'm not going to let you get away with not answering that question. It's a hard because, and it's okay to say I don't have it yet, or I haven't thought of it because they're always evolving. Your lens is all like I've had like 3 or 4 different lenses during the course of my career.
Well, I stick with what I have as a personal experience of some sort in my. It's got to have happened in my life. Although I'll throw some, pop culture references in all the time, but they relate to who I am and and that. And I think I try to connect. It's funny, you can use certain references, but you better know who your audience is because I would throw out references that you'd have to be 65 or older to even get them now. So if I'm going
Right.
into a college, they're going to stare at me.
Is it
So
me or is Jack Parr's a little off key with his monologues lately? Well.
yeah, I did this joke. Friends wanted to go to a strip club, and it was celebrity lookalike night. Walked in, Agnes Moorehead was on the stage. Then I updated it to Janet Reno was on the stage,
Now,
and
see,
then
there you go. Yeah, Agnes
you
Moore.
know,
That's the Bewitched mother,
I
right?
haven't heard,
right,
didn't know that
right,
one.
That's
right.
funny.
So you,
Well,
you got it.
that tells you how old I am. I got your reference. Damn it! Damn it! I shouldn't know that. Yeah, what are you talking about, old man?
Exactly.
I pictured her immediately. That's funny. Yeah, and then Janet Reno is your updated one. But I got to be honest, I think Janet Reno is now outdated. You'd have to come up with.
Oh, I haven't
You have
done
to
that
say,
in ages. That was a long time ago when I was doing
right.
that.
That's
But yeah, it's I mean, Carney Wilson, come up with whatever you want. It's good. You can find someone to fit.
Yeah, we call that a recognition laugh. That's a laugh you get because everybody understands the
Right,
reference, and
right.
it's something that fits the
And
bill.
you have to connect with people that way, in some aspect of your. You have to connect. You've got to find a connection. That's a great way to connect. Is like you're on. Not everybody should get it. Not everybody should get it, but it should be enough that now you've got those people. Like those people are with you because they relate and laugh about something similar that they've seen in their lives, and that's why personal experiences and have the freedom to, I have a little bit of freedom to just stretch the truth a little bit, when you're storytelling and setting things up. They don't have to be precisely what happened, although often a lot of stuff isn't precisely how it happens. And if people can relate in any way, they're going to find humor. As long as it's laid out properly, the joke's written well, it's edited well, you're not yapping about nothing where people start drifting off. That's never a good sign.
Never is. Hey, I'm talking here. Wake up.
No. So, and there's never a bad audience. I mean, there is,
Yeah,
but if
but
you
I,
go
I
up,
agree though. I agree because I've done sets where I'm like, well, they sucked, and then Dwayne Kennedy comes up after me and kills, and I'm like, well, nope, I
Mhm.
suck. It's me. It's me.
no, you have to. Well, that's the reason you got it. All right. Here's the thing. If you're just starting off, you better have an opening line and don't be afraid to use it until it's over and over again. Make it perfect. Let them tell, who you are. Tell them who you are and make them laugh.
It really
No
does.
more than 45 seconds, 30 seconds if possible, even less if you can pull it off.
Mine was. I know what you're thinking. How can a handsome guy be funny? But you're about to see.
And they loved you, right? They loved you
No,
instantly.
no, I had to change that one. I had to really change that one. Something about it that wasn't ringing true. I can't figure out which part, at some
Did you have hair back then? Was
No,
that
no.
Were you better looking back then?
Nope.
no.
It was I think I looked exactly like how you see me now. This is how I looked when I was 28. It was really weird. Now, what about that? Like, talk about like your personal look, because like comedians, to me, the weirder you look, the funnier you are. But the weirder you look, the harder it is to be in front of people and have them stare at you. And so, talk about the confidence that you need to have, despite what the real world is telling you about who you are. And like, I'm losing my hair. I'm missing a tooth. I've got weird skin. I'm big. I'm short. I'm some
Listen,
special needs or whatever.
anything that's obvious, address it right away.
Yeah.
Don't try to play off that you're looking like Wink Martindale up there. You got to be who you are.
Is it
And
okay to look
address it.
different or weird?
It's okay as long as you don't try to pretend you're a normal person.
Exactly.
People like weird.
Yeah.
People want to embrace with weird. If they can't be weird themselves, maybe they got an inner weirdness that they love it. But don't play off that you're just, shopping at Target like everybody else, which you are.
Right.
Let's face it.
But you're a weirdo shopping at Target. So then do that bit. Do the bit about what a guy who looks like you or a girl who looks like you has to go through when you're trying to buy socks.
Everybody's been at Target. I don't know that necessarily everybody's bought socks, but I get where you're going with this.
Yeah, everybody's been in that bin, where you're trying to size up what's going to fit on your foot, and you have to get something that's big enough to allow.
Hey man,
shrinkage.
do you remember going to the shoe store where they had those shoe fitters where you stick your sock laden foot on this thing and this guy would,
right,
tell you how
Al
wide
Bundy. Al Bundy would be there.
I don't know if Al Bundy was there. This was before Al Bundy.
Yeah, right. My foot had 7 shoes on at once. That's it. And then you make him go to the back. Get me a different one, young man.
That's how you do it. Have 9 open boxes there, and just you can't decide.
You'll be here until I find one that fits, and you'll get your commission, your 40 cents.
Yeah.
I need to see your manager. Back then, there wasn't a Karen; it was just a jerk.
Yeah, there was a lot of those out there, and that's the other thing. People, people can connect with jerks out there. So hopefully, you've got some stories about jerks or idiots that you can make fun of. I mean, listen, I'm not telling people where to write or this or that, but there's a lot of ways to connect with the audience, and similar experiences that who had the one. It was Brian Regan, seeing somebody across the street walk into a spider web, and then he would just go, and you don't know what.
What's that guy doing? He's just standing there.
People can connect with that because most people have walked into a spider web, and how crazy.
Again, it's a recognition laugh. I've seen that. I get that. And then he brings out how funny it is that it's hard to explain what you're doing if you don't know why that's happening. So that's really a funny moment.
Yeah, he's one of the funniest comics out there. Let's be honest.
Watching him, a lot of there's certain comics. Mitch Hedberg was like that, and you watch them and you're like, I'm not sure if I should keep doing comedy because why bother with
brilliance? You're seeing brilliance
like that. Chris Rock was like that. I saw Chris Rock riff a bunch of bits off of a napkin in New York, and then a month later I saw him do it on HBO, and I was like, I saw that bit when it sucked, and now it's really good. I should probably stop doing comedy.
Well, that's where you never stop on a bit. You never say, "Oh, it's finished." No, you keep going. But another line, add a tag at the end. Every time you do it, add a tag. If you go on stage and you don't throw at least 15 seconds or a new line or something out there, every time you go on stage, something new or tag something or do something.
Right.
What are you doing? I mean, it's
we
good.
Talk about that all the time. That the big mistake new comedians make is they have an idea, they put it out there, and then they move on to their next idea. And what you're saying, which I totally agree with, and our whole school of thought was push until there is no laughter, then back up one. And exactly. I really feel like that's the way to do it because sometimes you don't know how big the bit is yet.
Well, the biggest laughs you haven't written yet. They're still waiting.
That's a good piece of advice.
and once it's over is when the entire audience is laughing or clap, and you got to take an applause break like big time. Then you can, acknowledge whatever and then move on to the next thing, or not. You just move on. Have some sort of segue in place for that. Know what you're going to jump into, but they're going to laugh, and that's when it's done. And maybe it's not done. Maybe it turns into a 20-minute bit. I don't know.
Well, that's what
But
was fascinating to me when I was starting out, watching the headliners that would come through the Comedy Zone there in Orlando. And what I noticed was that the newer comedians and the younger people were doing a lot of jokes, and they were funny, and they were getting good laughs, and they were doing joke after joke after joke. And then people like Ron Bulliard would come in, or James Gregory, and then they would not just have jokes, they would have pieces, and then each piece would go 5 or 10 minutes long, and they would have a series of those pieces, and that would tell a story about who they were and their journey into the world. And I was like, oh, I got a lot more work to do. It's more than just getting a laugh, although you have to get those laughs, but there's also a whole nother above the net like goal with a comedian's act.
that's an art form in itself, storytelling comedy, because that's not what Carlin did. He talked about his child. So yeah, you can, but you can't tell if you're going to tell a story and you've got a great punchline. Don't make them wait 4 minutes.
No,
Make them laugh, along the way, and stay with you, because it's really hard to hear this setup that's 4 minutes long, even though you've got a great punchline at the end. Sorry.
and I don't even necessarily mean like stories, like a story that's happened to me the other day, like someone like Ronnie
Bullard.
I keep saying Bulliard, but it's Bullard. He's so good, and he doesn't really tell stories as much as he has a theme that throughout his act, and we begin to see who he is, and then he does a lot of callbacks, and then his whole act has these pieces, so that he might be doing a bit about his wife, and then so he has a 10 or 15-minute marriage bit, and it's really a bunch of bits together, and it might be a bunch of stories together, it might be just a bunch of bits. But what I realized was that, as a comedian, I have to begin to group my bits together into subject matter, so that I can now have a more sophisticated approach to how I'm delivering my material.
That's great in theory, and if you can do it that way, where everything segues properly into the next part of marriage.
Great in theory. It's hard to do.
I would tell people I was married with jokes up front. I would tell them my relationship status. I would tell them in jokes up front, and then throughout my act there would be bits about my wife or bits about this or that I've already addressed, that this is who I am, so it makes sense. It's not pulling it necessarily out of the blue. I never put things into sections like that. It sounds terrific. It sounds like a great way to do it, but if one of those,
that goes to show you that everybody does it a different way. And I think that's perfectly okay, because you did it in a way that makes sense to you in your brain. However it unloaded, because that's the whole point, right? You're trying to deliver an act that's, if you're doing a middle act, you're trying to do 30 minutes, or if you're a headliner, you're doing 45 or 50. So you have to have a real idea in your head of how it's going to unfold for these people. And so I think everyone has a different idea of how that goes.
Well, you should always know what your opening and what your closing is going to be. And if you've got it laid out in between there, that's fair enough. You always need to be prepared for the unexpected, whether that's a server dropping a tray of drinks on a customer in the front row. That's going to happen right before your punchline to maybe one of your best jokes. You ruined
my evening. You did that tray drop.
Yeah, and of course it's she's wearing a white dress, and it's a Hawaiian that just was served. So what are you ordering that for?
Right, and then everyone looks at that, and then your punchline just sits there.
No, it's the punchline never gets delivered. You can't go back. Do not go back.
No,
abandon ship on that bit. Move on to the next.
I've seen guys stubbornly try to get that bit out, and it never works. It never gets the light. If anything, you have to go back to it 25 minutes later when everyone's forgotten about it, and then make a joke about the fact that you went back to it.
that could work, but people are do
right?
what you want to do. Do what you want to do. Learn the hard way. I don't care.
Go ahead, give it a try, my man. Give it a try. Now let me ask you about that. The check drop. It's a famous moment in every show, and it's when the club decides to get their money from the audience, but the show's not quite over, so they drop the checks, and there's an instant everyone looking down at their check, and everyone going, well, I didn't order tax, whatever dumb jokes that they throw in there, and the show is sucked over into that energy. What's like when just as someone who's a booker and someone who's a club like who's managed a club, like what how do you watch people handle that moment? Like how do different comics handle that check drop moment? Like what in your mind, how does it stand out? What's a good way and what's a bad way to handle that moment?
As a comic, it's best that you don't know what's happening, and that's because the club is doing their
Thank
job.
you.
If you as a show booker or a producer of any kind, you have to acknowledge that this is a moment. Now, if it's a shady place, you're worried about everybody skipping out on their bill, so you want to get that money right away. There's new techniques. There's pre-authorizing right at the beginning, so everything's guaranteed on a credit card. A lot of people use cash, but really, there's a lot of stuff that's Tampa. I went to the Bears Bucks game last year. Everything was cashless. You couldn't even use money to get anything.
Your money's no good here, literally.
It's filthy. Money's filthy.
It kind of is, isn't it?
Well, I remember you picking quarters out of the urinal, Mike, and that was back in the early days.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do when you're playing Zelda.
All right, so where was I
Zelda
going?
champion. You gotta
The check
fund
drop.
your ride, baby. You gotta fund your ride.
All right, so pre-authorize if possible. If you can do that, you should need to have servers that know how to be quiet and discreet when they're dropping the check, and how discreetly come back if necessary. Never drop the front row because all the attention is on the front row. The server should, if you sit in the front row, and the server should tell them this, you'll settle at the end of the show. When the show's over, I'll be right here to settle up with you guys. And that's it. So again, giving the comedian the best chance to not know what's happening, when distract part of the room, not all of the room at the same time. So anyway, that's as a comic, you could have jokes to address the uncomfortableness, I didn't order this type stuff, but no, just ignore it if possible. Because if you draw attention to it, you've just dug yourself into a deeper hole that is one that you didn't want to begin with anyway. So,
and then now you got to dig yourself out of that hole and end the show.
And you're not going back to your bit again once you jump off it, unless you end a bit and then address it, which is the timing.
We've already been over that. You can't go back to that bit, dude. We already told you that earlier in the podcast. Oh, this guy's dying up there, Danny.
And you don't want your show to end on a thud, but sometimes it happens. Sometimes an event will happen at the end of your show, and they remember you were funny the whole time. Just say, appreciate you, whatever. And good
That's
night.
not my time. Thank you. Good night.
Something. MC ready to come up, music, just get things going, and it'll be fun for everybody. I mean, let them know that they enjoyed themselves. That's all they want to do, is leave knowing that they had a good time. Listen, you're up there, you're talking, so the dude on his first date doesn't have to say anything stupid.
Right. That's our main function, is to give you something to do while you're trying to get laid. Come on, comics. Know your job. It's all you're doing. Just be the man, be the guy, be the woman. Move right there.
Don't steal. Another for new comics. Don't listen. If you got a premise about the furry toilet seat coming down while you're trying to pee, and somebody else is don't try to change it. Leave it alone.
Now, but I will say that if you have a good, clear comedy lens, you can do a toilet seat bit. You can figure out how a toilet seat is funny to you. But if you try to use the same approach that someone else used because you saw it and you're trying to imitate that, you're thieving. You're doing what every comedian hates, which is you're taking my creativity and you're borrowing it as if it's yours, and that's not cool. But
Well,
I think that there's only so many love songs, and so you can't tell the Beatles and the Rolling Stones they can't do any more love songs. But you got to do your own version of it. Otherwise, you're just copying the
yeah, you can listen. You could take any premise and make it unique in your own, but don't take a premise that and its bones and rewrite it that fits you. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's something to do. I don't know.
No, I don't think it's okay. I'm working on this one new bit, Dan. Tell me if you like it. I'm thinking about baseball and football being so differently. And baseball's kind of wimpy, but football's really rough. And I was thinking about going through each of the differences. Does that sound something?
That sounds like something. Yeah. Was
I
that
think
AM and
George Carlin,
FM? I
George
don't
Carlin's rolling
remember.
around in his grave. I did that. I did that.
Yeah, it's some of them. I mean, there's been a lot of guys called out, and call them out.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've literally been stolen from, call them out. Robin Williams used to take Stephen Pearl's stuff all the time, and then he'd have a check written for him the next day.
I've
But
heard that.
you know,
I've heard that.
that's
Here, take it. Take the money. Take the money. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
and what Billy or Ollie Joe Prater would steal it without and go, I do it better. Argue that, and he
Well,
did.
so I heard his story was someone came up and said, "Hey, that's my bit that you just did." He goes, "Yeah, but don't I do it so much better?"
Yeah, exactly. That's it. So,
And you couldn't argue with him. He kind of did.
but you know what? That sours the taste in my mouth about that comic, regardless
Right. Me
how
too.
good he is. So
Yeah,
yeah,
because like comedy is so hard and it's so unique. And when you are good and you figure it out and you begin to have success on stage, the very last thing in the world you want is for someone to steal that thunder and get that storm on their own self. It feels really like a ripoff.
yeah. I've had a few of my bits almost done word for word a couple times, and I'll just call them out. I go, dude, that's just not cool.
Not cool.
And
You know what? In LA, what people would do is they would send their ad executives up to the comedy clubs undercover, and they would watch these comedians do bits, and then they would use them for their ads. Like they would steal a concept, and that happened to me. My bit that I did about the bed seduction, where I said the bed is so soft and tempting that it tries to seduce me back into it. It's Michael, you look good, and have the bed sort of, I want you in me. Oh, bed, no, dirty, naughty bag. you know. And so all of a sudden, someone calls me up and goes, "Hey, dudes, they stole your bit." I go, "What?" And there was a mattress commercial, and it was they changed the sexes. It was there was a man seducing a woman back into bed, but it was the exact same. They were using some of the lines from my bit. It's like,
wow.
oh, come on! And there's nothing you can do, really.
Yeah, I mean, you can have sets recorded, you can have them time stamped, I guess, anytime. I mean, what do you do? Then I got to hire you're not going to win. I don't know. It's a shame, but there are thieves out there, and I would do everything in my power to not let them advance too far. I remember at Bennington's club, this one guy, and I'm not going to mention his name clearly because I can't remember it, but I would. I introduced him as the Milli Vanilli of comedy, and
I know who you're talking about.
and I think by the end of the week he asked me what that meant. And I go,
That's really funny. That's how unoriginal he was. Is he didn't even get the reference.
Yeah, so
The guy, I've never stolen that joke. Is that new? I saw it at that club. That was a great club. I saw Richard Jenny performed there, and I had never seen Richard Jenny before. And if you've never seen Richard Jenny, look him up and watch some of his old sets. He passed away, but he was so funny in that. And this was when it was probably the early '90s, so I was just beginning in my career, and I watched him. He did, I think, probably like an hour and 20 minutes. And at an hour and 5 minutes, I had to go to the bathroom so badly, but I was upset that I was going to have to go pee and miss 3 minutes of this guy's set. And then I found out that in your club, they would pipe it in the bathroom. I was like, oh, I was holding it this whole time and I could have been listening. And I said that to someone else who was pissed, and he was like, me too. I was trying to hold it so I wouldn't miss anything. So that it's funny how that kind of experience can be so amazing. When you have a comic that's good.
it's great to experience that in person and know that's something that somebody has achieved. Whether you're going to achieve it or not, certainly it can be a goal and
Yeah.
should be your goal if you're in this. But people can had that power. They really had that power to own a room, no matter how big it is. They I mean, the tours now are in stadiums, man. Comedy in stadiums, in the round stadium. What I saw George Carlin in the round at Mill Run Theater, which was maybe 600 people, and now they're doing the Chicago Stadium, the stadiums. It's like Pat
Yeah.
opened for Santa Sebastian. He's doing Madison Square Garden, same thing, and it's multiple nights. And I've been to a Bulls game, and I've been on the third level, and for comedy they got the
Oh,
screens, but then aren't you just watching it on TV with
yeah.
additional laughter around you? I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. And good for
Steve
them. They're
Martin.
making a fortune, but holy shit, that just blows my mind. Comedy, in my mind, is an intimate experience that you should have, and you want to be close to the comedian. You want to see every gesture, everything he's doing or she's doing up there that's part of their act. That's who they are. And if you're that far away, you can't really see who they are. You can maybe hear if the audio is good what they're saying, and that's just my viewpoint. I don't know, maybe crazy.
Yeah, I'm wondering, do you have stories of like when the first time you saw some people that were starting out that you knew were instantly going to be headliners? And then like the other way, like did you ever have someone like that guy's going to suck, he's not going to make it, and they did make it, and you were like surprised?
Oh, hmm. I've had situations where I've been told this guy sucks, this guy sucks, this guy sucks, and I would keep giving him stage time. And they
Hey,
did get.
listen, I'm right here. I'm right here, Dan. That's kind of really rude to be bringing this up right now.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever discarded somebody that's made it big. Um,
That's good. That's a good sign.
I don't think so. I mean, it's
I said,
certainly
Mitch
possible.
Hedberg, he sucks. I'm not
Mitch
that
Hedberg was
guy.
one of my favorites, man. One
Was
of
he
my
the best?
favorites.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
booked him at the original comedy festival in
yeah,
Chicago.
yeah. He
I
did the
remember
first one.
you had him, you had Craig Robinson, you
Yeah,
had Tom Rhodes, you had
Billy Gardell,
Billy Gardell,
Doug
you had
Stanhope.
I was going to say Doug Stanhope. You had Mike Lucas there. You had did I just mutter my name amongst those
Uh,
others?
Daniel Tosh was there.
That's right. Tasha was in that one.
Uh-huh.
That was such a great festival, and all those comedians went off and did other things based on that festival. They a lot of people scored some good stuff out of there.
Yeah, it was. I was lucky because at the time there was Aspen and there was Montreal, and that was it. And so the Chicago Comedy Festival was the third one, and I was a comic trying to put this thing together and compete with HBO and Montreal. I knew I couldn't really compete, but yet the purpose of a festival in my mind, because I was a comic, was to get work or to get noticed or to get in front of people that you normally would have a difficult time getting in front of. So that was my mindset putting together. But who's going to come? So I had to play it off bigger than it was. And again, this is before social media. This was 1997. I started, 1998 was our first year. And so there was, the internet was there. And so we had a website that was interactive and pretty cool for its time. But
You've got mail. Chicago's having a festival. You've got mail.
it was very difficult in a city as big as Chicago, to get people to know, with so many other events going on, to get people to know that it was happening. So
That's
it was
interesting, Dan. That's a really good point because you know who made that point to me was Bert Haas, the owner or general manager of all the Zanies, and he was saying like because Chicago is such a big city, you are fooled into thinking that you could easily run shows there and score a big audience. And he said, but that's a false assumption because there's so many things to do. It's hard to grab your portion of that crowd. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that's how it worked.
it's entirely, that's why you're doing independent shows. You're trying to produce shows in bars and things like that. You're competing with a lot of other things to do. and with the sports, teams that the city of Chicago has, the beautiful summers, I mean, there are times when you are not going to be able to draw a sold out show unless it's a name, unless it's, if Dave Attell's coming through, guess what? You're probably going to fill the place. But sometimes it's not that easy. We're going to the festival. It was certainly that case. The
Yeah.
first show that we did was at the Village Theater, and
Mhm.
it's Mitch Hedberg, Tom Rhodes, Earthquake, Billy Gardell, um, one or two, I can't remember,
Oh,
but
such a good show. That was such a good show.
10 people, 15 at the most.
We're in the back going, what is going on?
And I was doing what I could do, but what I did achieve was getting industry to come to the festival.
Yeah, those 10 people were all from like industry.
Yeah, whatever, it worked. It worked as far as being an opportunity for comics. I remember trying to get attention. I mean, we were using fax machines back then and stuff.
Yeah.
So I remember sending out a fax to I had all the contacts for all the agencies and all the, agents and managers. And I made a announcement that the Chicago Comedy Festival was moving to Tupelo, Mississippi. And people literally thought that was real. Some people in Hollywood, people were talking about it.
We don't want no Chicago Comedy Festival down here in Tupelo. That's not what we do.
It just got attention. You got to get attention. You got to get people talking about you. So something you do needs to make people talk about you.
Yeah.
And
give us your favorite memory of the Chicago Comedy Festival. What, like, when you look back at that, there's so many of them, but like, tell us one of your favorite memories of that whole event. I know there was multiple events, but that first one was so special.
I think picking up Zach Galifianakis after the after parties, wandering the streets and getting him back to his hotel was fun, because a lot of the fun happens off stage. A lot of the craziness and the camaraderie and the relationship building and so forth happens throughout the time. And you're forced in a festival environment, you're given the honor to be in the presence of so many of your coworkers that you never get to work with on the road.
True.
So it's a great opportunity to build friendships, learn about other comics. I always tried to make sure there were a lot of unknown comics, not mainstream, just newer people, giving them the opportunity to be recognized and build friendships. I mean, that's one of the best ways to get on the road. It may be not sending a tape to somebody, a booker, but maybe getting the recommendation of somebody who wants to bring you along and work with you.
That's great.
That's your best way in. So making relationships is never a bad thing, but you don't want to be that pesky, relentless person that wants to learn everything. This is a true story. Myself and John Midas, a comic out of Chicago, were doing the road. We were doing Ottumwa, Iowa. This is where it happened, Ottumwa, Iowa. It was a bunch of Iowa, Ken Muller gig, and maybe South Dakota, whatever. And we got done with the show. It was at upper level of this bar, and this dude comes afterwards to talk to us. We're real friendly, talking to him, this and that. And then we go across the street to a bar. He hounds us there. He's like following us. We literally had to we got to literally get away from this guy. This is crazy. We go back to our hotel, which is several blocks away. I go up to my room. Midas is down in the lobby. I come down from the elevator. The elevator door opens. Midas is walking towards the elevator. The guy is following him. He's like, "Get out!" It was a Twilight Zone.
Run!
Yeah.
Psycho
Don't be
killer.
that guy. Don't be that guy.
No. Yeah. No, tell me. That's funny. Tell me. Like, one of the things I loved about how you handled that festival was you really treated all of us special. Like, we were all celebrity stars, and like you said, we were all getting a chance to work with each other because we're all headliners and we never get to be on the same stages with each other. But there was one show where we did, and you orchestrated the whole thing, and I thought it was so brilliant the way you did it, because instead of telling us what the order was on the final night of the festival, you said, I'm just going to call people up depending on who feels right for this spot, so everyone pay attention. So you had all of us headliners as Galifianakis, Robinson, all the ones we just mentioned, Mitch Hedberg. We're all sitting there watching each other with a whole packed room in that Zanies club, and we didn't know who was coming up next. And then one after the other, right? Do you remember this show?
Yeah, no, of course I remember
Talk about that show for a while, and then talk about who closed it, and the only one in the world who could have closed that.
Boy, that's well, it happened every year at the festival. The first year, actually, it started unintentionally. I
Always
was
does, right?
I was asking this person who I had called on several times to MC the show, and she was like, "No, I don't want to MC. I'd just rather be on the show." And so I didn't have somebody that I wanted there to MC, and I just wasn't going to throw that. So I said, I'll do it, And so that's how it first started. And as far as the lineup goes, I really did not have a lineup at all. I knew who was in the room, and I just went with what I felt, because it was actually, and I've heard this from several people. Chris DePetta told me that was the best comedy show he has ever been in his entire life. The first one.
Go through some of the names that were on that show.
I can't, Kevin. I can't even remember, man. There were so many. Stan, everybody that was there.
Yeah. It was Hedberg.
Daniel Tosh went out.
Yeah. And then I remember you held off on Doug Stanhope until the very end, because he was the only person who could follow all those other excellent comedians, and he knocked it out of the park. He was riffing off of everybody's bits. He did a callback from everybody's bit.
That was the magic in it. He tied everything together at the end instead of trying to outdo everybody with his. The momentum, I don't know, man. It was something that you felt. I looked around, and sometimes I had 2 or 3 names, and I just spoke, and one of them came out, and that's how it went. But
it forced us to watch each other. That was the great part, because sometimes you'll leave the room because I
got 20 more minutes.
Yeah, but this was like, oh God, I could be next. And then we got to enjoy each other for the first time. It's like, you selfish comics, watch someone else for once.
True, it's true. But everybody, and then think about the nervousness that the comics who hadn't had their name called yet were feeling, that they might be next, and holy shit, I got to follow that, or what the, but I hope I get called at the same time. You're hoping you're called next, but yet at the same time you got that terror of how hot the room is. That's one of the reasons you want to get up there, because it's a hot room, but damn, that last few comics have just kept steamrolling through here. And you question your own ability, but you get up there and then you knock it out of the park, man. And it's just, what kind of feeling? Like, that's the whole thing, is I think every single one of those comics remembers that night without question. Every single one of them remembers that night, who they followed, who they went before, just all of it. And that's what you want to do, man. You want to have great memories when you're doing this stuff. Create is fun. You have to be creative. You have to do all the stuff ahead of time to get to that point. But everybody, my best friends are comics, man. I mean, I believe maybe they all, I don't know, maybe.
Well, we had a meeting, and you're out.
I thought so. See, I got that feeling. I knew right away. I was like, why did I say that? They just
we voted, and it was oddly unanimous. So
that doesn't surprise me. Sons of bitches.
What surprised me was, on that show, Mitch Hedberg, and we all basically thought of him as sort of the star of the festival. Like, we all, like, no one knew who he was yet, but some kind of did. And then after that festival, everyone knew who Mitch Hedberg was. And I think after that is when he got all his big attention up from Comedy Central and MTV and all that. And I remember he, on that show, that final showcase, he said afterwards, he was like, no, I can't, maybe it was even during, but he was like, I can't do what you guys are doing. I can't just go up and just be funny. He goes, I have to do my act. And all of us were like, oh, dear Lord, Mitch, for the love of God, please just do your act. It's so good. You don't have to do anything else. You're the most brilliant person we've ever met. Please don't try to do anything besides your brilliant act. But the fact that he had imposter syndrome and was insecure goes to show you how damn hard this business is.
It can be very hard. Funny thing with Mitch, they wanted him on, I think it was the Kevin Matthews show. It was on the Loop in Chicago. And I brought him and Doug Stanhope went along with, and in the elevator they were talking. We got to pick one guy that nobody's heard of, just some no name, and just make up this rumor that he's the hottest thing going. He's just absolutely the funniest guy. He's going to be the next whatever. And randomly, they picked out of the program Daniel Tosh, who was a complete unknown. And then, sure enough,
this loser will never go anywhere. Or,
but Mitch was great, and I'm glad he did exactly what he did because everybody loved it. And I didn't put Mitch up too late in the show either. It was more at the beginning of the show.
But I love that he admired his fellow comedians for what they could do. And it goes to show, it would be like Michael Jordan going, man, I can't believe how Pippen can rebound, or I can't believe how now I can't think of his name with the tattoos.
Rodman.
Oh, thank you. I can't believe Dennis Rodman can do such a great job rebounding and really admiring someone for their skill. And that's the way it was with Hedberg. He was in awe of other comedians, and I thought that was pretty cool reflection of who he was. A real fan.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, do you have any more questions?
Can I ask you about the economics behind a booking? Like, do different comics have different pay structures, or do they get a part of the ticket, or does the club get all the food and alcohol sales, and the headliner gets a portion of the ticket sales, or how does that structure work?
Yes. Absolutely all of those things. Different venues, different deals, different contracts, different, when you're big enough to do small theaters and choose instead to do comedy clubs, you are usually working on a door deal. You are, have the confidence that your name is going to attract the crowd. That's why when you ask me about social media, if they're looking at how many followers you have, this or that, they're trying to in some way calculate what percentage would come to see you. It's dumb. If you instead bank on your name of providing consistently funny shows and funny comedy, then it doesn't matter who is being put on stage as far as recognizable names. So hopefully those people become recognizable in short order. But when they are recognizable and they're banking on themselves, they usually make a door deal. Some of the social media people that I have worked with in the past have gotten pretty close to the entire door. And then you've got to have people who don't make door deals, who make bad door deals. For instance, there are bad door deals. There are shady club owners who will tell you there are far less people in the room than there are. There are people that will not pay you.
A lot of those big comics come like with a counter. They have a guy who sits there, a girl who sits there, and counts. Yeah, just to make sure that they're telling them the truth. Yeah, especially if it's a sold out shows. There's 300 people. You don't know if there's 300, 275, or 320.
Well, they'll count the empty chair. There goes, they'll count the chairs beforehand, then they'll count empty chairs. They'll count there's ways to do it. And
I heard they count toes. They count 10 at a time.
Yeah, but that happened with some guy with frostbite, and they stopped doing it. It was like a thing.
You can't keep track. This is Chicago. It's too cold.
It was a problem. Yeah, the green, and people didn't like seeing that decaying toes.
Yeah, it's funny. Comedy and gangrene don't go well together. It's weird.
But yet there's
something weird. Look at my hand. I froze it off. Oh, your next comic is coming to give him a hand. Seriously, he needs one.
I was just curious at his writing. I always ask our guests their writing strategy, how they write jokes. As a new comic of first year in comedy, I have an hour to do comedy every night. What's your equivalent of like doing 100 push-ups for my comedy muscle? What would you say? Drills, exercises, writing techniques? What do you tell a first year comic?
Well, that's a hard one, man. I mean, I don't try to give advice. I remember, being the guy and, wanting a feedback on their set. And it was always difficult for me to break the news to them that they're not funny. I mean,
I don't
so
know how to break the news to you, but I'm just going to say it.
I just
You
keep
don't got
doing
it,
what
kid.
keep working,
Keep
kid.
working. Oh,
No,
okay. So I have a chance.
1 million.
I never wanted to give them hope. That was the whole thing. Because then they don't bother you as much.
That's funny. Don't ask him. Don't ask him. He's sad. Dan is sad.
No, I think writing comes down to just doing it on stage to a certain extent. You got to have your premises down. You got to have jokes. You can practice in front of the mirror. As far as sitting down and trying to come up with, I'm going to write this joke. I don't know, man. You need to just pull a bunch of ideas together, and you should definitely have a notebook that you just constantly are going through, and then don't look at certain parts of it for a while, and then go back to it with a fresh, outlook on what that is, and maybe it'll come to you in a completely different way. And there, the missing piece will be there, and it'll make it really funny instead of just an idea. But write on stage, because if you're not writing on stage, you're not going with the flow. And if you're not going with the flow, your jokes aren't going with the flow. I mean, they could be if they're put together in the right order and everything, but that's too structured. Early on, you need to be free, man. You don't need to be killing every time you go on stage. You need to be learning every time you go on stage. And if you're learning, you're writing. You're writing and learning if that works or not, or if that's funny or not. And sometimes some of your best lines will be just boom, they just come out. And that's one of the reasons you should record your sets. And I used to, just a mini tape recorder, whatever, that's what I would use. And I wouldn't listen to it every single time, but you know what? When I knew I said something funny and hilarious, and I remembered it and I didn't remember it the minute I'm walking off the stage, guess what? It's there. If you're lucky enough to not forget things as quickly as I do, write it down as soon as you get off stage, what you wrote. Just write something that's going to trigger your memory. My best bits are gone in the wind, man. Until I started really writing ideas down when they came. Always have something to write with. Your phone is a voice recorder. I mean, that it's so simple, but set it up and know how to just press a button and boom, it's there, right there. Just get your funny thoughts down and then work on them when you have time to write and really think and go from there. Get something that's funny. Make sure it's funny. If it's funny to you, don't lose hope in it. Don't lose hope on it. If it dies 1,000 deaths, it sucks. Get rid of it. That's it. Don't. The resuscitation has not worked. It's unless, and you can get with groups of people too, man. Some comics, I remember at the comedy scene, we would hang out in the hotel rooms afterwards, all the comics, and it was one of those clubs where a lot of comics would come just to hang out, just to be in the vibe and in hopes that they would, but not even expecting a set ever. But yeah, don't listen to me when I come to advice like that. I clearly have no idea what I'm talking about.
You're horrible. You're horrible with advice. It's you're the last person in the world I would ask for anything, But we are glad we asked you for this, buddy. Thank you so much for being our guest. You have a lot of wisdom, and we're waiting for you to share it. But that's okay. We just
listen.
Can't
There's certain types of things I like, and certain types I don't like talking about. And you know what? This business that you're getting yourself involved with, I want nothing to do with.
Nothing.
Don't
even bring it up.
I don't like it. The people are pigs. They're filthy.
It smells weird where you're at.
Like
That's what it does. It smells weird, metaphorically and literally.